Blog Talk Radio. To the Radulich and Broadcasting Network Movie Review Group, Club, Binary Group of people. I don't know. It's just me and Mark this week. I'm Robert Winfree. I'm your de facto host, even though this is really a two-man show. I just do the intro because Mark doesn't like to, and I'm perfectly happy to help him out as far as that goes. Between you and me, I think he gets a kick out of listening to me flounder around for a catchy intro, but that's just speculation on my part. Tonight we are talking about the big one, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. It has smashed several records. It's also become so extraordinarily polarizing that you'd think everybody just had a nice little sit down and chat about Man of Steel. I mean, since that's the comparison we're going to wind up drawing here, the discussions about Man of Steel are downright civil compared to some of the stuff that's come out about this one. So Mark and I are here to talk about the film itself, where it succeeds, where it fails miserably, because it does on a couple of fronts, and why a lot of the critics have once again missed the boat. Because Mark and I, we both have our perspectives on the film. We're both going to share them. We're not going to yell at each other. We're not going to, this isn't going to be one of those episodes where Mark and I get into it at each other, because as amusing as those are, Mark has informed me in no uncertain terms that he is not in the mood to argue that particular point with me or anyone else, and I respect that. But we will be talking about critics and why they are... why there's so much inaccurate critical analysis floating out there about this movie. Anyway, since I've mentioned him a few times, let's go ahead and bring him on. All the way from Florida, where you can blame him if there's a problem with the state, Mark Radulich. How you doing, Mark?
This film has broken me, Robert Winfree. I actually am experiencing a little bit of a depression, and I feel like it's at the root of it is this film, but it's not the film's fault. It's the public discussion that's come out of the film that has made me look upon the world with disfavor and think I need to cut all ties to humanity and go live in the woods. What was it Henry David Thoreau said? Live... What was the word he used? Anyway. I need to go. I need to cut myself off from humanity and go live in the woods for a while because I can't take it anymore.
Alrighty, welcome to my world.
I half expected you to say, Mark, welcome, we have cookies, but you can't have it.
If I had cookies, I would give you them, but I don't have any cookies.
No, but seriously, I
should make cookies now that I think about it. I think I have everything I need.
The Man of Steel pair of podcasts that we did were fun, but it resulted in conversations held outside of the show, which left me banging my head on the desk. And it hasn't gotten any better with this movie. I don't understand how you can be a professional critic and say things like, I didn't understand the plot. This movie's plot is about rail thin. If you didn't understand it, you should probably pick a different career. This isn't that complex.
I'll go with the if your complaint was not, if you have that complaint about this movie, and you did not register that self-same complaint about the first Avengers film, you lack consistency to such a degree as to be laughable.
The other complaint that I've heard that just made me throw my hands up and say, I give up. There's almost no point in going on anymore, in trying to have, interesting conversations about movies because it's just an exercise in futility, was this movie was no fun. And there's an insinuation at foot here. The insinuation is this movie features comic book characters. Comic book characters are fun. Comic books are fun. Therefore, if you follow that line of logic, comic book movies should all be fun. They shouldn't make you think at all. They shouldn't be anything serious going on. It should all be a fun time at the movies. And one, that's grossly inaccurate. There were plenty of not fun comics out there.
A whole lot of them.
Not just at DC, but at Dark Horse. Dark Horse was the home of the not fun comic. But in Marvel as well. Well, the Marvel movies have been lighter in tone. They too deal in heavy subjects. I'm almost afraid now for what people are going to say about Civil War. But I guess, you have not the Scarlet Witch, but Black Widow and Hawkeye in a fight, and one of them says to the other, we're still friends, right? It depends on how hard you hit me. Yuck, 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 yuck. So
yeah, somebody mentioned this somewhere. I forget exactly where I read it. But Marvel's films share some issues that we are seeing with, both Man of Steel and Dawn of Justice. They just cover it very well with dialogue that is designed to invoke your laugh track sense so that you don't pay attention too much.
So I don't understand when professional critics don't review the movie that they are being paid to review. And what I mean by that is, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think as a professional movie reviewer, you should be reviewing how well the movie was put together, how it looks, how well it was acted, and I think you should be talking about any themes that arise throughout the movie. It's fine to say a plot is constipated or nonsensical or illogical, or even that you didn't understand the plot because it was poorly executed. I don't know how you got to that conclusion with this movie, but at least that's a valid criticism in and of itself. The thing about this movie is no fun is absolutely driving me crazy and making me not want to talk to people anymore. That's how bad this is.
Well, there's two things that go into that. A, fun is subjective. B, calling a movie no fun is not a valid criticism unless the movie is trying to be fun and fails. It's one of my major criticisms of the Transformers movies. Like, you're trying to make stupid, lighthearted crap.
I'm reminded of a bit from Family Guy. And it was done for a different reason, but I feel like this is where we are.
I don't care for The Godfather?
No, but that's a funny one too.
I like The Money Pit is my response to that.
That really does sum up like where we are with film in this world, but no, a different bit. This is the one where Peter is trying to get back at James Woods James Woods has taken over Peter's life out of revenge for Peter ruining his life. So Peter decides he's going to be James Woods. So he goes on to David Letterman and he pitches 9/11 Fun.
September 11th, 2000 and Fun. Yeah, I played this window washer working on the North Tower, and just as I finish the last window, I turn around and guess what I see coming. It's old-style humor, but I think people will get it.
James, that's incredibly offensive. But I feel like that's where we are. That's kind of the expectation is, whether it's the Holocaust or 9/11 or, a question of what happens when a man with God powers comes to the earth and wreaks havoc. What are we supposed to do with this? Who are we who might fancy ourselves bigger than the world come to realize that we're just ants? How do we handle that? And that's supposed to be tackled with fun, apparently. That's supposed to, that's supposed to be lighthearted fare. That should be treated with bright colors and golden age style superheroes, I guess. And to those people, I would say, then you go make a movie, because you're not criticizing this one in a valid way in any way, shape, or form. And again, it makes me just hate people and not want to talk to anyone anymore.
Yeah, and again, there's so much here that you can legitimately criticize in a negative way.
Let me go on and say right now, right at the top of this show, and then we'll get into the movie. I liked the movie. I was entertained by it. It's not perfect. There's a lot of wrong with the plot. I mean, I could, it was, excuse me, still getting over being sick. The main plot is rail thin, and it's crowded out by a bunch of subplots, which Robert Winfree and I are going to debate whether or not they needed to be there. But the point of it is you have the barest bones of a plot, which is why I don't understand why people couldn't follow it. Real briefly, people were complaining about Lex Luthor's motivations and Batman's motivation. This is the last thing I'm going to complain about before we get into the actual review. I saw a lot of critics in various places make the following two complaints. I didn't know why Batman and Superman were fighting. I didn't know why Lex Luthor hated Superman. And I listened to that and I thought, did you watch the same movie as I did? I mean, with Batman, if it were any more obvious, it was like he would have had to hold up a sign that says, I hate Superman because he killed my family by knocking down Wayne Tower. Like, what more were you asleep in the first 5 minutes of the movie? Now, the Lex Luthor one, God help us, Jesse Eisenberg might have given a portrayal of Lex Luthor that irritated people.
I wanted him dead so fast.
He says the point being, he says the reasons he hates Superman in the movie. He does several monologues about it. He talks about being made to feel small and insignificant next to Superman, and he can't handle it. That's motivation enough. Imagine you are the son of imagine you are Donald Trump's son, or Donald Trump for that matter, and you are king of the world. You have all the money. You have all the beautiful women. You have all the power. And then suddenly someone shows up and makes you feel insignificant. That alone drove him crazy enough to want to see this alien being murdered. And that's the genesis of this movie. It's what I found interesting about it. It's what I found interesting about the Lex Luthor character.
There was nothing interesting about the Lex Luthor character.
But apparently that was too subtle for most audience members. So, yeah. We're kind of starting at the end and going backwards here. But that's my biggest issue with the national conversation around this movie. It's not fun. I didn't understand it. I don't know why Batman is fighting Superman. I don't know why Lex Luthor is fighting Superman. And oh yeah, Wonder Woman was awesome. Wonder Woman who didn't belong in the movie, by the way.
Absolutely did not.
Wonder Woman who has nothing to do in the movie except show up. Didn't need to be in the movie in the first place, but yes, she's awesome. Good. That's where we are, folks.
That is people being so blinded by expectation, by, oh, look, we're finally getting a Wonder Man property in the last, 3 decades. Okay, well, that's good and all, but let's talk about it. What about her did you like? Well, she's there. Okay. Any great acting choices? No, not really. All right. Good character arc. Well written. No. She's still something from Batman, though. So what?
It would be like if, your favorite comedian walked out in a performance of Les Miserables and just started doing stand-up. Okay, it's funny. I like that performer. Has no business in the middle of a performance of Les Miserables. I don't care if he's wearing the same clothing as everyone in the play, in the musical, still had no business being there.
Her purpose in this movie is, she's fully clothed fan service is basically what she is in this film. Her purpose is to show up at the end and engage in a CGI-filled brawl.
All right, you want to take a crack at laying out the plot of this thing?
Yeah, I'll do what I can. All right, this movie opens with us realizing that, hey, that Bruce Wayne fellow was actually in Metropolis when Superman and Zod threw down. And one of the buildings that got knocked over was his Metropolis offices, and his employees die, and because he's an orphan, he now naturally surrogates family to everything else around him, even though that is not necessarily either accurate or adequately explained within the movie. But, go with it. Orphans, right? Right? Sorry. Anyway, he holds a grudge against Superman for this. He begins obsessing over it. He's still the Batman, has been for some time, and he's apparently at a point in his life where he's comfortable killing people. Although, not the really dangerous ones, mind you, but if they're there to be extras and cannon fodder, boy, he'll mow right through them. So I have a major logic gap when it comes to this version of Batman. And I'll get to it when I get to my criticism. So he is looking for a way to deal, exact vengeance, to curtail Superman. The federal government is looking into what is Superman doing? Is he good? They're having one of those PBS debates that no one actually pays attention to because we'd rather show up with signs and chant things and wear face paint and engage in wild riots for no particular reason, because how dare you think differently than me? Sorry, can you tell I'm a little bit jaundiced and jaded about the state of our country right about now? Anyway, we also meet Lex Luthor, who has in his possession the largest piece of kryptonite on Earth at the moment that people have access to. He wants to bring it into the United States because, hey, this will stop Superman if things go badly. The federal government blocks him from doing this because, well, we don't like you and we don't trust you. His response is to blow them up and basically frame Superman for it. Batman, the world's greatest detective, mind you, buys into this manipulation. Whole hog. Just hook, line, and sinker. So he steals the kryptonite from Lex Luthor, who smuggles it into the country illegally. Superman is trying to deal with, should I even be doing what I'm doing at this point if people don't want me? Batman creates, a new suit. Lex Luthor forces Superman to fight Batman by holding his mother hostage and threatening her life. Jesse Eisenberg minces around a lot in this movie. Sorry. Plot synopsis, not criticism yet. Batman and Superman engage in a fight that is not too bad. Batman is utterly disarmed emotionally and physically by the mention of his dead mother's name. See, it's funny because he was holding kryptonite, and Superman used Batman's kryptonite, which is, hey, your mom had a name. So that
Can I just
really
go ahead and say right now I didn't have a problem with that?
I did. That was so stupid.
I disagree, but we'll come back. We'll come around to it.
It was just so. Within the context of the movie, it was supremely stupid.
I disagree.
Anyway, Batman is disarmed by this. He and Superman do all but share the moment from Step Brothers where John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell go, did we just become best friends?
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Especially when Batman has the temerity to utter around Superman's funeral, I failed him in life. You spent 80% of the movie trying to kill him. You miserable hack.
That's a different subject. But the moment that Batman is in a murderous rage is trying to kill Superman with a kryptonite spear, and all Superman is able to utter in defeat is, save Martha, who Batman has still a strong relationship to the memory of his parents, which is psychologically accurate. That's a code word. That's a code name that would shake him from wanting to murder somebody, which is already out of his character. And when he says, "My mother's in danger," Batman comes to realize and remember he's supposed to be a hero who saves people. It's a moment that shakes him back to reality after being driven almost to the point of insanity. Why people aren't getting that, I have no idea. But that's what happened in that moment. Not that they should be best friends, but that Superman basically shook and slapped Batman and said, "Hey, you're a hero. Someone's in danger. I'm not actually presenting any danger at this moment, but there's someone who is an innocent who is actually in danger." And that's when Batman goes, "Shit, you're right," drops the spear and goes after her.
Yeah, I still feel it was a weak. I feel it was a weak move. I also feel there's a lot in this movie that I feel is utterly unearned.
Well,
and I want to talk about that.
We can go back to arguing this later, but that's what happened there.
No, I understand what happened. I just think I'll get to it when I get done with this. So Batman goes and saves Superman's mother. Lex Luthor reveals that, no, the CIA knew the FBI was setting them up, and boy, I have this monstrous Kryptonian who's going to wipe out all life on Earth in the form of Doomsday. We get a massive fight. Wonder Woman shows up. The fight continues. The fight goes badly because Doomsday is nigh unstoppable. Superman gets the kryptonite spear that Lois threw into a bunch of water after Batman decided not to use it. Batman stabs Doomsday. Doomsday stabs him and kills him. They both die. The world mourns. And we end with, the beginnings of Superman rising from the grave. Along the way, there are plot points, such as, hey, the Flash shows up because he can travel through time. Lex Luthor's investigating metahumans because sequel, and there's a ridiculous, unconnected, and largely forgotten subplot of, hey, Lois Lane's actually a journalist.
That and Wonder Woman is trying to protect her hidden identity.
Is that what she was trying to do? I didn't think Wonder Woman was actually trying to do anything. She was just there on screen.
Yes. She steals. Okay. One of the things that someone complained about, which I almost punched my computer when I was listening to the video for this. No, I'm sorry. It was the Rotten Tomatoes podcast. It was Gray Davis. No, that's someone from California. Gray something or other. I'll pull it up on Twitter. But anyway, if you listen to the Rotten Tomatoes podcast, Gray, whoever the fuck her name is, and the guy were doing their review of the movie, and she was like, I didn't understand why Bruce Wayne went to this party, or how he knew about this party.
There was a scene just before that where they expressly state, hey, you were invited to this. You don't actually... There's a plot point in there.
He's trying to figure out a way to hack into Lex Luthor's computers, and Jeremy Irons, as Alfred, says, you don't have to figure out a way. You can just go to this party, and that's why he shows up there. But apparently, again, people watching this movie on acid, not paying attention to what's happening.
There's a conversation between Alfred and Bruce about, I'll need the suit so I can break into Lex Luthor's place. Well, the Batman, I have to, break in. No, you don't. You can, you don't need to be the Batman. Bruce Wayne can do it. Well, Bruce Wayne can't break into his house illegally. Bruce Wayne doesn't have to. He's been invited.
Yeah, apparently that was too subtle and somebody missed it. In any case, the reason why Diana Prince is there, who is Wonder Woman, is she also wants to hack into the computer because she knows that Lex Luthor has information on her that she is trying to keep quiet. And it turns out, in what some have argued to be one of the most laughable scenes in the movie, is in keeping with his character, Lex Luthor is keeping tabs on the rise of metahumans. That's not the unbelievable part to me.
No, their icons being prominently displayed on their files was what got to me.
Okay, well, that got to everybody. And to me, I overlooked it because, lazy screenwriting, whatever. That's not the point of it. Let's stay with the point and not get bogged down in the minutia. But yes, the pretty Aquaman symbol, the Flash symbol, and the Cyborg symbol, all there. Excuse me.
Just in case you didn't know this was a setup because it's in the freaking title of the movie.
Anywho, so Wonder Woman wants to hack into the computer because she wants to get whatever information out of Luthor's hands that he has on her. Later on in the movie, when Bruce Wayne finally does hack in, after he gets his thing back from her that allowed him to do that, that's when he sees the files, and we find out that there's a picture of her with Chris Pine and some other people from the movie that's coming out in 2017. In any case, that's the connection that Diana Prince is Wonder Woman, and this picture proves it. That's the point of that whole thing. All right, where do you want to begin with this? Because if we just start randomly yelling out things that that bothered us, other than my coughing, this show's going to have no cohesion to it. So where do you want to start?
Well, I suppose I had to start with the good. Because for as much as I did not enjoy this movie by and large, there is good in this movie. The two principal actors, in this case, Affleck and Cavill, both do admirable jobs. They're poorly written, but they do an admirable acting job. I know a lot of people are up in arms about Batman will kill people. Personally, that doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I don't care. I think people need to stop being babies about that. Again, it's like one presentation of Batman is all anyone accepts. Like, oh my God, Batman kills people. But why? Why is he killing people now? It tells you in the story that he's a cynical Batman. That Bruce Wayne, and there are so many bits of dialogue in this that he shares with Alfred, where they're debating morality, essentially. And he says things like, how many innocents are left in Gotham? How many stayed that way over the years? He's tired. He's burnt. He's starting to kill people because he doesn't care anymore. I don't understand why that got lost on people in this. Like, this isn't Golden Age Batman. This isn't even Silver Age Batman. This isn't Batman Year One. This is a Batman that is at the end of his rope, not the beginning of his career. He's seen his partners die. Apparently, it affected him psychologically, and he's lost that moral center.
My only complaint about that, and I will argue this one all day long, if you want to have a Batman that kills people, fine. There's a version of that character where that works. I fail to see why he would not have simply snapped Lex Luthor's neck at any number of opportunities. Heck,
well,
one of the final scenes is them alone in a prison cell together. I'm like, good, kill him. No, I only killed henchmen. Well, then you lack internal consistency of any variety.
Okay, well, let me debate you on that for just a moment. Because he does say at the end of the movie that he failed Kal-El in life. And I think that was meant to, again, we see this is the arc of Batman in this movie. That he starts out as somebody who has lost his respect for life. He's been pushed to the brink, and he's now acting out of rage. And in acting out of rage, at the climax of the movie where he nearly kills Superman, he's reminded there's an innocent out there that needs your help. Go get her. And I think from that point on, he's starting to reconnect with his moral self. And so at the end of the movie, when he says, I failed him in life, it's that realization that I can't go on being this, this violent force of nature. I have to go back to being the moral Batman that I once was. This is all, I think, you have to read into the dialogue a bit, which may be why I'm getting so angry at the people who are summarily dismissing the movie, because they're not thinking about it at all. Maybe I'm reading into things too much, but that's the character that I saw. That's the arc that I saw.
I can appreciate, again, some of the arc that Batman goes through, and
Subtext.
I'm okay with that.
That's the word I was looking for. There's subtext here in what he's saying. Sorry, go ahead.
I really, in the sense of he's going to, try and become a good person again, I accept that. I still don't understand why you have established that Batman will kill people and never kills, the author of all your pain, Bruce.
Well, it was after the fact.
This version of Batman both would have and should have killed this version of Lex Luthor.
Okay.
That's my big logical inconsistency. I mean, that final scene when he punches the wall, it's almost like you can hear him say, "Damn your plot armor."
But you do recognize the argument that I'm making.
I do. And I am perfectly okay with that in the sense of, okay, he's going to try and come back to the light, metaphorically. He's still going to work at night. I don't think it would have mattered in the case of, hey, look at this guy. Look at all he's done wrong. Guess what wrong he's going to do in the future? I mean, if he never crosses that line to begin with, fine. But you have him on screen shooting people. I'm okay with Batman shooting people. He should have shot Lex Luthor. Saved me a world of pain having to watch it.
Okay. More things that were good. I liked the idea of the story. This is the same argument that I made with Man of Steel. I liked what they were going for in this movie. I'll say it again. Lex Luthor's character is the summation of this idea that we were once kings and now we are ants and we are uncomfortable with this. Superman represents an existential threat to people who thought they were the most powerful on this planet and are now being reduced to nothing. And Lex Luthor going above and beyond, going crazy in order to try to balance things out, try to regain that power that he lost. I could take this in a direction and describe it a little bit further, but I'm not going to because I'll probably lose people. But think of somebody who feels like they've lost power in their life and feels the need to regain that power. That's what's happening in this movie. I liked the idea of Bruce Wayne presenting a conservative ideology, which I'm sure on some level just pissed people off left and right. The man was channeling Dick Cheney, for God's sakes, in all but saying I'm channeling Dick Cheney. He has dialogue that goes something along the lines of, if there's even a 1% chance that that man could turn on us, then we have to take him out now. because he's
There's
too
even a
powerful
1%
like
chance he could turn on us. We have to treat it as an absolute certainty.
Right. There was an entire philosophy espoused by former Vice President Dick Cheney in the early stages of the War on Terror. If there was a 1% chance that this terror threat might actually happen, might be carried out, then we have to deal with it. And it's been proved to be ridiculous, but that's the place Batman is at that time. And so
in which case, again, he should have killed Lex Luthor, who has demonstrated to be a massive risk to humanity.
So I like the idea of Bruce Wayne wrestling with the 1% doctrine. I liked Henry Cavill's portrayal of Superman, who's still conflicted
when
over
he
what
actually
his
gets screen time. He's on screen less, I think, than almost anyone else in this movie, except for maybe Lawrence Fishburne.
Okay, are we doing positive or negative things? Because I thought we were doing positive.
Positives, I just had to make that. There's a negative I'm going to get
I've got things to complain about here, but I'm trying to talk about the things that work in the movie. Because people are ultimately going to listen to this and go, why does Radulich like this movie? And it isn't just because of pew pew, I like things that blow up. I'm explaining that to me, there was a lot of subtext in this movie. There was a lot of deep philosophical questions being asked. And to me, I like when a movie pushes you. I like when a movie gets you thinking about things. And sure, we have ultimately what amounts to a fist fight between two comic book characters, but that's only a small portion of the movie. Now, apparently critics thought it should have been the whole movie, like it was a fucking wrestling match, but that's, again, neither here nor there at this point. I like a movie that challenges you.
These are the same people, mind you, who have the temerity to criticize this movie for, trying something different, and will then, on the other hand, criticize Michael Bay for his lack of substance. Like, no, you idiot. You can't have... Sorry, you can't criticize people for trying to make a thoughtful movie and then complain that there's not enough things exploding, then complain that Michael Bay blows things up indiscriminately and say, no, we need, plot and character. No, have some internal consistency.
So anyway, I like what the movie was trying to do with Superman, which is, make him conflicted. The next step in his evolution from Man of Steel, now he has a purpose. Now he has something to strive for, and it has consequences. I liked the dichotomy of he saves Lois, but then causes an entire village to get slaughtered.
No, that wasn't his fault.
But it doesn't matter. What the movie is saying is that there are consequences to even the best intentions, which I liked. I liked that they were talking about that kind of thing, that there is no pure good or pure evil as such, but there's all these different shades, and how do you navigate that? I liked the idea. I like Superman's vulnerability, physical vulnerability, when he fights Batman at the end of the movie. When he's shot up with kryptonite, and it was something that was actually tackled in Supergirl this season, where they talked about, you've been invulnerable for so long that you're just dependent on brute strength. You don't actually know how to fight. So when someone who can match your strength comes along, you lose. It was one of the things I loved about their fight that they have. That even in a combat scene, there's still subtext going on. There's still something about these characters that's interesting, other than them smashing one another, which again was lost on the general audience.
Superman's lack of refinement when it comes to actual fighting is something that gets touched on from time to time. I mean, it's one of the things with his fight with Zod that I think a lot of people missed. One of the reasons he kills him is because Zod's a soldier. He actually knows how to fight. And he's only going to get stronger as time goes on. You have this window of opportunity where you are in an advantageous position, but that advantage is slipping away, every couple of seconds, because you don't know what you're doing, in terms of hand-to-hand combat necessarily, and this guy does.
Hey, Russell, occasionally my friend and I will start horseplaying at his house, and he's bigger than I am, and he's in better shape than I am. He's also been doing jiu-jitsu for a lot longer. And so what ends up happening is I have to resort to, like, almost not fighting dirty as such, but I have to resort to almost hurting the guy because he's so much better and can physically contain me with just doing regular moves. Like, he can go half speed, half strength. I almost have to go full strength to keep up with him. That's what's happening with Superman and Zod. You know, Zod is a trained warrior who not that he's going half, but can basically take Superman out using, you know, just a little bit of his experience and ability, where Superman always has to use full force because he has none.
Yeah, and you get some of that here with the fight between the two of them. I liked that fight. That was, I mean, it's not my favorite fight scene even from this movie, but I liked the way it was set up. I liked most of the way it was executed.
I know. Try to contain yourself here, okay? Mm-hmm. I liked Jesse Eisenberg's performance.
Oh, for the love of.
I thought somebody who has fallen from grace in his own mind, I thought he portrayed that well. I thought, you know, as far as fallen gods go, amongst us humans, I thought he portrayed that well. I thought he delivered the monologues in a very passionate way. I was with him. I understood his motivations. I thought it was good. It's fine if it's not your cup of tea. You know, a lot of people, half the people who saw this movie didn't like Jesse Eisenberg's performance. Again, I don't want to rehash everything I've already said about the guy, but they were going for a certain kind of character. They were going for, you know, Mark Cuban, essentially.
And they created the most impotent villain in comic book history. When he's alone on that roof with Lois Lane, I actually thought, you know, she could kick his ass.
What? Okay. In any case, I thought Jesse Eisenberg gave a good performance of what they wanted for that character. Whether or not you agree with the characterization or approve of it, it's a whole other conversation. But if they're going for, what if Mark Cuban were knocked off his pedestal by an alien with god powers, what would that look like? I thought Jesse Eisenberg captured that 100%. I was good with it.
I find nothing redeemable about that character, the writing, the directing, or the acting of it. Absolutely nothing.
Duly noted. The visuals obviously look good. I think obviously Zack Snyder knows how to frame it.
There are moments of really good visuals. Zack Snyder, since you've brought up wrestling a couple of times tonight, Zack Snyder strikes me very much like an Ed Ferrara or a Vince Russo. There is good there. There is talent there. It's simply an issue of putting it in an appropriate framework to maximize the delivery. And unfortunately, in this case, we also had David Goyer as one of the primary writers. And David Goyer is, look, if one of those two is Vince Russo, the other's Ed Ferrara, in the sense that right framework, right people around them, they can do good things. Great things, even. Absent that, not so much.
I guess that's it. I didn't have a problem with the CGI. I didn't have a problem with the fight at the end.
I had problems with some of the CGI. Not all of it, but some of it.
And lastly, I thought it was a brave choice to kill Superman at the end of the movie. I was okay with giving the audience a little smidgen of hope with him vibrating the casket and the dirt kind of coming off of it before. You know, I honestly expected more. I was waiting for a hand to shoot out of that casket or something, you know, a la Jason. But they went with subtle, and I was okay with it. And that pretty much wraps everything I like about this movie. I liked the acting, the characterizations, the themes, the visuals, the fighting, the action, and I liked how it ended. Those are the things that I enjoyed. Let me start with, and we can kind of go back and forth on this, but let me start with the most glaring problem I have with this movie. We have a real thin plot that I feel is elbowed and jostled and smothered by extraneous subplots that could have been taken out of the movie. Somebody referred to this as a textbook example of corporate movie making, where
I'd agree with that.
You have a synopsis, you have an idea for a movie, and the studio comes in and says, add this, this, and this so that we can build on it later for other stuff. So here's the thing. You have a plot that basically says both Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne want to kill Superman. Meanwhile, Superman struggles with his role in the universe. That's the movie. And if you just did that as the movie, there was time to explore a lot more of these things than they already did. As I said a few minutes ago, I liked all those things that they explored. The problem is there wasn't enough time dedicated to any of it because they had to share screen time with things like forming the Justice League and establishing Wonder Woman as a character. Both things that didn't belong in the movie. There was no reason for Wonder Woman to be in this. Her subplot about trying to get the information that Lex Luthor has on her so that she can continue to hide her identity is extraneous at best, retarded at worst. And while it is consistent with Lex Luthor as a character for him to be keeping tabs on metahumans, since his whole thing is metahumans threaten my existence, it wasn't necessary to do what amounted to what should have been an after credit scene or something on the DVD, like a DVD extra, where an interactive thing where you can click on different icons and see this footage being shot, that's where it belonged. That's what I thought what I was watching. I thought I was watching a Blu-ray extra. That whole scene where you're seeing the Flash foil a bank robbery, Aquaman mugging for the camera, and the short history of how Cyborg gets created was completely unnecessary, and it was like it was just like a sidetrack to nowhere in particular. And then my favorite asshole part of the movie. This actually angered me. I was so irritated by this. And I wanted to find the people who put this together and just beat the shit out of them. So we've talked in the past about setting things up and then not paying them off. And I've been reading about this. This is, of course, the very famous, now famous scene of Flash coming back to the past from the future and warning Batman that Superman's going to turn on everyone and that Lois is the key. First of all, the sound was so bad in that scene. I couldn't figure, and the visuals were so bad, and I couldn't figure out who it was. I thought it was Cyborg at first.
Had I not read a plot synopsis prior to seeing the movie, I would not have necessarily understood what any of that was.
Yeah, I couldn't hear what he was saying, and I couldn't figure out who the hell that was. Turns out it was the Flash in some sort of suit of armor, having come back from the past, and what he says is, Superman, you were right about him, you were right about Superman, Lois is the key. Oh my God, have I come too soon? Find us. Okay. Now, that sounds like they're setting up for Injustice, and that does fall in line with the quote-unquote nightmare sequence, which is Batman with a bunch of rebels fighting a Superman army and Superman unmasking him and then I guess killing him at the end of that scene.
Yeah, he goes all Temple of Doom and rips his heart out.
Right, which is what he does to the Joker in Injustice. So I think that's where they're heading. They're going with all of this. Completely unnecessary. It added nothing to the narrative. I mean, you could say, well, it does add to the narrative because it just adds to Batman's paranoia. Batman had enough paranoia. Batman had enough motivation. He didn't
You could have, if you wanted to express his paranoia, there are other ways to do it. There are better ways to do it.
Things left unexplored, and I'm going to get to like the worst thing about this movie in just a minute. Because I'm starting with all the stuff that needed to come out of the movie that I thought just crushed the plot under all of its weight. So between the dream sequences, the Flash showing up out of nowhere, and the Easter egg scene with the various pretty icons, and Wonder Woman as a whole, if you had removed all of those things from the movie that don't really add to the narrative, that don't really add anything to the movie, and are just extraneous universe setups, you could have had time for a very thick and enjoyable plot that ruminated on some very interesting questions. At the very least, you wouldn't have had a first hour of the movie that was shot, like people said, like a porno, where it's just scene after scene after scene, no establishing shots, no one acting in front of the camera as such. It's just dialogue cut. I'm watching this, and after the first hour of the movie, I'm like, did the intern cut this movie? Jesus Christ. I understand there's a 3-hour cut coming, and I feel like to get it down to 3 hours, they cut the shit out of that first hour, but it was to make room for nonsense, basically. None of the scenes in the first hour have room to breathe. You as an audience member don't have time to process anything. You're just bombarded with scene after scene after scene of dialogue, and then finally the movie slows down long enough for you to get set up for an action sequence. Like, terrific. That's to me the worst, most offensive thing about Batman v Superman, is that whether you thought the movie moved fast or slow, depending on your attention span and personality and all of that, that whole first hour is a frickin' blur. Everything you need to set up this movie goes by so fast. I guess now that I'm saying that out loud, I guess now that explains why people didn't get it. That's bad movie craft. Any movie that doesn't allow its scenes to ruminate at least a little bit, let them breathe, let them settle. Leave the camera alone, for fuck's sake, for a few minutes per scene. Not literally end a scene of dialogue and move on to the next thing. This isn't porn. We're not watching a gonzo porno. It was that drove me nuts. And the whole first hour, I was distracted out of the movie because of it. When it finally slowed down and the scenes could actually open up a bit, I settled down too. Jesus, that first hour was rough to get through. And that's really all I have to say that was wrong with this movie. I thought it was cut badly, at least for the first hour, and it had way too much extraneous nonsense that didn't need to be there.
Yeah, there's so much in this movie. This movie feels, and on the one hand, I can appreciate. There's an ambition, I think, to this movie that, on the one hand, is to be commended. There's a desire on some level to make this a much more encompassing story. And I can appreciate the ambition on some level. It fails to come together in any kind of objectively cohesive narrative. Watching this movie feels like an attempted visual representation of a film student's stream of consciousness, the way it is set up. You do not stick with anything long enough to really give it meaning. You do not learn enough about anything in any kind of appropriate enough way to let it sit with the audience. And I think that problem extends beyond the first hour. It's most egregious in the first hour, like Mark said. But we move through this movie not as a constructed narrative, but more like, again, stream of consciousness is what I thought of when I was watching it. Like, okay, well, here's Batman. He's doing Batman things. He's trying to steal the kryptonite. And, oh, hey, wait, Lois is in this. What's she doing right about now? Oh, and hey, look, there's Harry Lennox. Yeah, we like him. Yeah, there's a subplot there. Really? Yeah. Oh, Wonder Woman. Yeah, she's in there somewhere. It feels so unfocused. It feels meandering. I'm not opposed to monkeying with, narrative formats necessarily. It just does not work very well in this movie. It comes across as, again, we go everywhere but nowhere, and there's so much in the writing of this movie that requires characters who are not on screen to have knowledge that people on screen had without ever explaining how they gained that knowledge. And that's a fundamental failure of the writing. I suppose I ought to mention why I dislike this version of Lex Luthor. Let me start off by saying this. I will not reference any other version of that character from any other medium for my complaints. I've mentioned before, I don't think that whining about source material when it's being adapted differently is necessarily a valid criticism. So I'm not going to talk about why this Lex Luthor fails in comparison to others, necessarily. When they cast Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, I said it was a terrible decision. Not necessarily because Eisenberg is a bad actor. He isn't. I think Eisenberg succeeds as an actor in two general archetypes. One of which is somewhat antisocial, a little bit nerdy, and kind of fumbling. See Zombieland. Or antisocial, quasi-hipster, aloof douchebag. See Social Network. And I knew that when they cast Eisenberg, that's what they were going for with Lex Luthor. A, late 20s, hipster, billionaire child thing. And it's a failure. It's just a failure. That is not the type of villain that this type of movie needs. He is borderline impotent. He's supposed to be, in this movie, he's, again, supposed to be kind of a puppet master manipulating people. And it just looks like somebody mashed up the Joker's hairstyle from The Dark Knight with Johnny Depp's inability to shut up and someone with Asperger's. He is devoid of menace. He is devoid of any kind of threat. He is the most comical character in this movie. The fact that this is supposed to be the person who is manipulating the world's greatest detective, and that's how they've established Batman in this movie. That's not me calling back to source material. This version of Batman is a thief, fundamentally. He does research. He gathers information. He knows things. He is an intelligent person. And every time Lex Luthor successfully manipulates him, I bang my head against a wall going, you're supposed to be smarter than this. You've shown yourself to be smarter than this in this movie. But because plot says so, you're going to fall for this one. This version of your villain is an utter failure. I wanted him to die not because he's a terrible human being who deserves it in the sense of the character. I wanted him to die so I would not have to deal with his little stupid facial quirks, his hipster jeans, and his crappy haircut. He is an obnoxious character.
So you don't see the point that I was making at all with him?
I do. I understand the point you're making, that absent Superman, maybe he's relatively benign. I'd still want to smash his face in. That's the type of character they presented. And in this instance, that type of character clashes so forcefully on just about every level with what you need from a villain. It is a failure of conception. It is a failure of execution. Now, does Jesse Eisenberg do this character well, in the sense that he was asked, play Lex Luthor this way? Sure, fine. He is a better actor than Tommy Wiseau in The Room. All right, he is better than the Dirt Worst. I'm not... Fine. He is equal to, Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. Acted, relatively the same in terms of competence. Lex Luthor was simply given more screen time. It's a failure as a character. I mean, change the guy's name. Let's to remove preconceived notions, to remove bias coming into this. Let's pretend his name is Schmagegi. All of my complaints about him remain intact. It is, and it's just a fundamental failure from conceptualizing this vision of your villain to executing it with. He's on that helipad with Lois. I'm more concerned for him than for Lois. I leaned over I was with my family when I saw this. I leaned over and I said, she could kick his ass. In high heels and all. I mean, because you know what he's going to do. He's going to push her off to draw in Superman. And my only thought was, Amy Adams pushing Jesse Eisenberg metaphorically into a locker is more believable on a physicality level than this. His plan, I have a major issue with the fail-safe of his plan where, hey, I'm going to make a doomsday monster. Well, fine, but, I mean, the first thing that was going to happen after Doomsday comes out is he tries to kill Lex. And Superman stops him, and I wanted to smack him. Like, no. You killed Zod because there was no other way. Let the freaking monster turn Lex Luthor into a fine red paste, then stop him. But... And I mean, I suppose at that point, his character, and this is what bothers me about his plan. If he sees in advance that Superman is going to either beat Batman or, convince him to go along with him or whatnot, then fine, I need a nuclear bomb. Because I have failed and I can no longer accept a world where where humanity exists at all if I'm not on top. But if Batman succeeds, let's move to this slightly alternate world where Batman actually does kill Superman. Giant rage monster that redirects energy and will nuke the world still comes out of there and there's no way to stop it. His plan from, again, I mentioned this to Mark offline. Lex Luthor's plan of attack is so convoluted and coincidence happy that it makes Javier Bardem's attack plans from Skyfall look concise.
Let's talk about what might have made the execution of this movie a little bit better in terms of what might have made Lex Luthor a stronger villain. One, I think Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne needed to be on the same page at the early onset of the movie. Like, if I had written this thing, I would have had it where Luthor and Wayne were actually on the same side and were helping each other. That, Wayne Enterprises and LexCorp were in cahoots in trying to bring down Superman.
Yeah, his manipulation of Bruce Wayne needed to be so much more intimate than this movie allowed it to be.
Right. Yeah, that I agree with. I was saying that my dad and I were talking about this earlier, and I said I'll never That is the one major problem I have with this is when he starts saying things like a little pushing and tweaking of Batman was all it took for him to fight you. It was like, wait, what? When did you have time to do that? You were trying to make a kryptonite gun, then you blew up Congress. I understand you intercepting the guy's checks so that you would have a patsy to get the bomb in there, but the you let your family die thing to goad Batman into fighting Superman, how was that even necessary? So the idea, so if he were more closer to Bruce Wayne and working directly with him and sort of egging him on, I think it would have been stronger. Had they moved the fight to the middle of the movie instead of basically the extended end sequence, there could have been a thing where they get to the same point where Superman sort of brings Batman back to his senses, and
that reconciliation needs to be in the middle, and they need to both start trying to take down Luthor at that point. There needs to be some more collaboration between those two.
That's exactly what I was going for. Is that it's too much rush at the end of the movie. There needed to be in the middle of the movie that idea that, hey, we're being played here. You're being played. That the real guy who's who's the villain in all of this is Luthor, and then they needed to go after him. He needs to then have a freak out and go, oh my God, the Red Capes are coming for me. I've lost control of this entire situation, and in a desperation move, create Doomsday. The way it's presented in this movie, he sort of walks into the scout ship, and on the one hand, I bought the teach me the secrets of the universe, which is how he discovers Darkseid. But then when he was just like, and do you want to, and people didn't know what that was. It's the birthing chamber from Man of Steel on the scout ship that's there so that they can populate planets with Kryptonians. If you don't have a memory from Man of Steel and didn't know that, fine. But that's what it was for people who are criticizing the movie not knowing what that was. It was perfect. It was perfectly fine. It was consistent in that universe. It had already been in the previous movie. Anywho, his desire to then, it just comes out of completely left field that he wants to create a monster with Zod. And there needed to be a stronger reason for it to happen. Superman and Batman are coming for me. I have to create this thing to protect myself. That would have made a bit more.
I'm curious. My other complaint about that. He mentions, there's this ancient Kryptonian flaw in their DNA. Well, okay. They were a relatively advanced civilization. I'm fine with them knowing that, okay, we don't, with, their society basically having a ban on levels of genetic experimentation. That's fine. How exactly do we get from that to here's a species we've never encountered before, and their blood will, and the addition of their blood is what turns us all into unthinking monsters who can destroy planets? That little bit of it was just, I just kind of went, yeah, no. Look, you want him to come across a failed science experiment from Krypton where, we're trying to see if we encounter other populated planets in the universe, what happens if, we interbreed with them necessarily. And it was, well, no, there's, either the children. I mean, there's ways they could have set that up better.
It also would have been stronger if it were an accident and a little bit more clear. The way I would have done it is he's I need to protect myself. I need my own Kryptonian to protect me from these people who are coming to get me. Which, if that was his motivation, it was not made clear in the movie. Again, a failure of the
he sets that thing up when he believes his plan A is going to succeed.
Right. So, meanwhile,
I mean, again, alternate universe where Batman wins that fight and kills Superman, Doomsday still comes up and destroys the planet.
Yes. Doomsday then becomes completely pointless. In any case, what I would have done there is I would have had him, he's in the scout ship. He knows they're coming for him. He's pressed for time. He's got this body here, and he goes, computer, reanimate this body. Bring him back to life. and the computer, they put him in the birthing table and goes, missing ingredients, need X, Y, Z, and he goes, fuck, and he just cuts his hand and goes, how's this? And he puts the blood in there, and
we are missing, genetic material, and he spits in it and goes, use that.
Yeah, or we don't have to spit in it. There's no need to be gross.
Well, I don't say that as a means of being, crude, but you need to get genetic material into something in a hurry.
The cutting of the hand is stronger. Cutting of the hand is a stronger visual. So he can say, okay, well, lacking any of the genetic material, I will cut my hand and the blood in there. And the computer can then say, no, that's not the genetic material we were looking for. This will create a monster.
This is not Kryptonian DNA. This is an ill-advised stratagem.
Right, and then they can do the whole bit where, are the Kryptonian Council here? No, do it anyway. And then they're like, aha, you think you've got me cornered? I've got Doomsday here, yeah, and then they can fight Doomsday from that point on.
And if only Doomsday would have just torn him in half first.
Have we? We need to discuss one more thing, and then I think we can move on to numbers and critics, and I can.
Real quickly, I have a couple of other.
Well, hang on. Did we discuss have we had our Martha fight yet? Because I know we talked about it offline. I don't remember if we've done it on the show yet.
Yeah, I thought that was. Mark brings up a good point about why it could work. Okay,
well, let's set this up. So, Batman has been driven to a murderous rage. Okay, I said that earlier. This is a Batman pushed to the edge, cynical, tired of the world, and with no more respect for life. That has all been beaten out of him. Now, he's been pushed to the brink of insanity trying to fight this alien with God powers. He finally defeats him. He's standing on his neck. He has the spear in hand. He's all red eyes with rage. Okay, he's got blood in his eyes. He's looking at Kal-El. And Kal-El said, now the whole time, the whole setup to this was he tried to get Batman, he tried to reason with Batman and tell him, hey, stupid, my mother's in danger. We need to go get her. And, oh, by the way, you're being manipulated. But Batman, in a rage, isn't listening. And people are like, well, why did Superman keep fighting? Let me explain this in simple terms. If I say to Robert, I need your help, and I can barely get that sentence out before Robert punches me in the face, maybe the first time he does it, I go, Robert, please stop hitting me. I need your help. At the second time,
you're not getting that second sentence out fully. If I'm in the same place that Batman is emotionally in that scene.
Right. You're going to get pounded on. And I'm sorry, if you hit me more than once, I'm going to hit you back. I'm going to promptly forget why I was there in the first place. And we are in a fight. Okay? That's what's going on with Superman there. That is entirely believable. That he would suddenly forget the reason he was there in the first place because his fucking life is in danger. Batman brought a level of danger to Superman that he had not experienced before. So it was entirely believable they would have this conflict. I mean, Jesus, it's like people don't think, people have tempers. So anyway, so Batman's ready to kill Superman. And Superman, with his dying breath, says, save Martha. He wouldn't say save Mom. He doesn't fucking know who Mom is. He says save Martha. Which, by the way, I dare any one of you to have someone choke you and see how well you can think of what to say when someone's choking you. You're like, oh, why did he say Martha? Why didn't he say Mom? For fuck's sake, people. He's being choked and nearly killed for the first time in his entire existence. Cut him some slack there. So he says save Martha. And, of course, Martha is Batman's mom's name. Now, this was set up already. See, this is where I want to punch people once again. You have the entire beginning credit that shows Batman's parents being killed, and the dad's dying breath, he says Martha. We know Batman has a lifelong sentimental attachment to his parents from the trauma of having seen them murdered in the street. So it is entirely plausible, not implausible, it is entirely plausible. It is psychologically true and logical for the name of his parents to be a trigger word that might bring him out of his rage-filled attack on Superman. So he says, save Martha. And Batman goes, Martha? And he starts screaming, why did you say that name? Because he's like, he's saying the name of why are you saying my mother's name? And again, because he's stepping on the man's throat, he can't quite get the words out, but Lois Lane shows up to say, hey, dummy, Martha's the name of his mother, and she's in danger. And that's where we have a Batman who snaps out of it, realizes that there's an innocent person being held captured, and he has to go save her, because that's what he does. He's a hero. He's a superhero. He may have wandered from that line over the years, freaks dressed as clowns tearing up his city and all of that. He may have wandered from that line when his partner was murdered in cold blood, ha, 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 as we see earlier in the movie. But this is a moment filled with emotion that he is brought back down to reality using a code word that is meaningful to him. And he says, oh, yeah, I'm a hero. Someone's in danger. And maybe he's a little embarrassed by all of this. Didn't anyone ever think of that? That maybe Batman, driven by rage, has neglected all else in order to, on a single-minded quest to kill Superman, and Superman, in a moment, shames him. And out of that shame comes this desire to drop everything and help this person, save an innocent human life. Why that escapes people, I don't know, but it made sense to me. But oh, how people have gone on and on and on about how, as you said before, it's a Step Brothers sequence. Which
no.
enrages me
Let me
to
clarify my position on that very briefly. The moment where he is, snapped out of his murderous rage, I can see your point. I think that sequence is one in a long line in this movie that are emotionally unearned. This movie is devoid of emotional attachment to the characters. Utterly devoid. Your emotional attachment to anyone in this movie is what you bring into that theater with you, not what they grow on screen. So Batman having an emotional reaction to that, while in keeping with the character in the strictest of senses, means very little to the audience because, well, why wouldn't it be silly? Now, what I said was more the fact after that, which when Lois is supporting Superman and Batman's like, no, I promise you Martha won't die tonight. You go stop Lex, I'll go save her, and you can have the top bunk bed when I get back.
I don't know why you're saying that.
Okay, let me also say that a lot of my complaint from that is not isolated to that sequence. In the sense that at Superman's funeral, well, Clark Kent's funeral, Ben Affleck says the line, I failed him in life, I won't fail him in death. Which is another utterly unearned bit of dialogue. There's no emotion behind that. And watching it in theaters, I almost facepalmed and went, you spent 85% of this movie trying to kill him.
I thought I adequately explained how he got to that point. Okay, I'll tell you what. I will counter argue my own point that I just made. I'm doing, I think, an adequate job of explaining the subtext of this movie. Unfortunately, the movie didn't do a good job of explaining the subtext of this movie.
Yeah, again, I will accept. Yeah, and I will accept. Yes, that's fair. Hey, get out of there. Get out of there. Sorry, my dog is a glutton. No, that's fair. The subtext in this movie, part of the problem with it is, given the pace of the movie, the subtext, which under normal circumstances takes a bit of effort to get into anyway, is lost even further by, well, we've got 80 billion things we have to touch on in this 2.5 hours.
My son, this past Christmas, didn't quite understand how Christmas works. So we taught him Christmas, you open presents. We hand you a box, you tear the paper off. Inside that paper is a present from Santa Claus. And my son, who was not yet even one this past Christmas, got as far as tear the paper off, and then he was like, give me another box to destroy, was essentially where he was coming from. He didn't focus on any one present. If you could talk to him and he could answer you in a language that you could understand, I don't think he could tell you one present he got for Christmas, because all he was doing was touch a box, open it, move on to the next box, touch a box, open it, move on to the next one. And it was even worse when we got to my in-laws, and there's presents everywhere and a lot of kinetic present opening energy. And it was just all he wanted to do was tear paper. Touch a box, tear paper, touch a box, tear paper. My son edited this movie. Okay?
Yeah.
It's just touch a thing, move on, touch a thing, move on, touch a thing, move on.
There's
no
more editorial restraint in Armageddon than there is in this movie, and I think Roger Ebert accurately described the editing of that movie as Michael Bay with his finger on the trigger of a machine gun.
Okay, you had a few more things you wanted to touch on.
Yeah,
but I need to yell and sing about the Martha thing, but I'm pretty much spent.
I know. I understand your perspective. And, again, they assumed part of the rush job in this means that the relationship between Batman and Superman that is supposed to be fostered by some of these events is not there, because we go straight from, oh, wow, our moms have the same name. Isn't that cool? To, boy, we got to fight the murder monster. There's no character development between that at all. And consequently, the assumptions made later on in this movie that, well, Batman would mourn him, not so much. He didn't even really know him. How could he possibly... again, all that stuff.
Without me explaining it to people.
Without Mark in the theater behind you narrating over it.
This movie will be presented in Radulich Around. Here's Mark Radulich to walk you through what's happening in the movie.
This movie, much more so than Man of Steel, I was struck by Snyder's color palette. I mean, I understand certain sequences are darker. Not just thematically, but, in terms of lighting. And I'm okay with that. But every time they're in light, with one exception, anytime they're in either artificial or natural light, in terms of in the movie, it looks like they're under bad fluorescent lighting. There is no bright, there's no colorfulness to this movie. Now, on the one hand, I understand there's a visual tone you want to go for. And I'm prepared to accept that to a large degree. But the scene that struck me most on, I think, was early in the movie when Clark gets back and Lois is in the bathtub. And I watched that scene and I just kind of went, we can't get some yellow sunlight here? I mean, I understand, okay, Batman going through Gotham in the middle of the night. Okay, we're making some choices here. Fine and dandy. But there is everything is muted. And, again, more so than Man of Steel. I didn't think it was as prevalent in Man of Steel as I did in this movie. It's really struck me this time around. Just how flat the visual colors are. And I would have liked to have seen, again, a few sequences. I don't necessarily need, the final battle sequence amid smoke and rubble to be brightly colored like a Michael Bay Transformers encounter. I don't need that. But scenes that are, by their nature, a little bit brighter, a little bit more optimistic maybe, Can we switch up the color palette a little and give the viewer some, diversity in terms of their visual input? The CGI, I have to touch on this because Mark doesn't view CGI the same way I do. And that's fine. It makes him a much happier moviegoer 9 times out of 10. But I am only myself, and therefore must talk about this. Roughly half of the final fight with Doomsday became muddled and overly blurry and difficult to read, and full of, Henry Cavill's face will be stationary while his body is flying around like a rag doll, because that's how people will visually identify. It grated on me visually a little bit. And lastly, their version of Doomsday. Now, Doomsday is not a deep character. In fact, for the vast majority of his original life, he's not even sentient. The fact that their visual representation of Doomsday looked like the malformed child of one of Michael Bay's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and one of the orcs from Lord of the Rings really bothered me.
The guys from Red Letter Media referred to him as a cave troll.
That's more. They took that base, they hunched him over a little bit more, and there's nothing new visually about their version of Doomsday. His powers are never adequately explained, which really bothered me. I mean, they mentioned that we hit him with energy, he absorbs it, redirects it, and grows stronger. Well, okay, then shouldn't dismembering him work, especially if it's done with a sword? Well, I know why it works, because I know what Doomsday is in the source material, but if we're assuming that people don't, we only have to go with the movie. Well, okay, he regenerates. Well, shouldn't Superman regenerate then? I mean, he could have a limb hacked off and he'd just grow it right back. I mean, unless Lex Luthor is actually part lizard, and we imparted him the regenerative capabilities of the average gecko.
That would explain a lot.
Yeah, like the constant licking of his lips and the twitches. Yeah, that's really all I have. I need to mention this briefly before we move on to Mark. You see, we're doing something different this week, ladies and gentlemen. I walked away from this movie and was, to my surprise, exceptionally apathetic. I mean, you've heard Mark vehemently defend elements of the movie that he believes are defensible. And if you don't think there's a lot of people vehemently on the other side, you're listening to this courtesy of the internet. I invite you to look around. I was shocked that I was just so nonplussed when I walked out of that. So this time around, instead of necessarily me banging my head against the desk when we read some of these critical thoughts from critics, Mark's going to be the one who's slowly losing his faith in humanity. My final thought, this is not as bad a movie as you might think if you only looked at the critical consensus on Rotten Tomatoes. If you don't know how aggregates worked and you just looked at it and saw 32%, I don't think it's that bad. It's also flawed on many, 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 many levels. And for some reason, that combined within me to create a surprising amount of apathy about it. I mean, if you've listened to me and Mark and I talk about no, that's actually me. If you listen to us review these things before, we have in the past gone at each other. We're friends. We're good. We have different perspectives. Occasionally, we disagree. We've had long conversations about editing, about various actors, elements of writing. where we have different perspectives. And the resulting conversations are, at least in part, brought about by our emotional attachment to our position, or the way we feel about the movie or the television series or whatever. And one of the reasons we didn't do that tonight, not just because Mark told me how world-weary he is. This movie, guys, when Mark, commits suicide 3 years from now, he's going to cite you people's reaction to this movie. But in addition to that, I just don't feel all that strongly about this film in any real way. So unless one of the critics says something supremely stupid, I'm not going to be banging my head on the desk this time around. Although knowing Mark, he's probably found a few that will. So, yeah, that's our thoughts on the movie. It has made, $400 million worldwide so far?
All right, let's pull up the numbers here. Worldwide, we are at $501 million. So
congratulations, you are halfway to profitability.
Yep, it's doubled its production budget. It now has to double. It now has to get to $1 billion for people not to be fired at one.
What was it they said they spent $400 million on advertising for this film?
Yep. Can we talk about that for just a second? One of the things that the guys over at Screen Junkies brought up was how they felt like, in a lot of ways, this movie was ruined by the trailers, especially the last trailer, which basically broke the movie down and revealed Doomsday, which, on the one hand, cool trailer, on the other hand, there was nothing left in the movie other than what order things go in, that really, there were no surprises left in the movie. I mean, they compared it to The Force Awakens, where even with the last trailer that they cut before the movie came out, there was still plenty of mystery left in the movie. There was still plenty of wonderment as how it was all going to unfold. With this, they basically gave you the Cliff Notes version of the movie, and I think for a lot of people, it ruined the experience. Like, they went into it knowing basically they knew what was going to happen, as opposed to allow the movie to take them to another world.
These are the same people who will watch with rapt attention as the jury returns a not guilty verdict in The People versus O.J. Simpson, mind you.
Still the best show on television.
Not even close.
But I in large part agree with the assessments that last trailer was a mistake on the part of the marketing team. We talked about a ways back that they really shouldn't have revealed Doomsday. That should have been a movie reveal. I think there was some stuff in the trailer they could have left in there, but ultimately, I think, as a contemporary example, Marvel's Civil War, I think, does a better job of kind of showing you enough that, you have an idea of what the movie's about, but not too much where there aren't many surprises.
Yeah, the movie's about Spider-Man.
Shut up. But yeah, we are at $501 million. We're almost at $200 million domestically. We're at $308 million foreign. It's had quite a drop. I mean, we'll see if this even gets to $700 million at this point. But Friday it made $81 million, then dropped to 50. Then by Sunday it was at $33 million. Monday $15 million. Tuesday $12 million. These are all domestic. So we'll see. I am rooting for this movie. I am rooting for Warner Brothers. There are a lot of people rooting against it. There's a fan petition to remove Zack Snyder from Justice League. So I think what's made my heart heavy and frustrated me is just the level of vitriol the whole DC slate of movies has brought out of people. We have mutual friends of ours online who are completely now dismissive of the DC cinematic universe because they've chosen to go with a more gritty, realistic, not totally representational version of the comics version of their universe. There are people who are angry that they're going about the whole universe building thing ass backwards.
Well, when people talk about this movie, and the inevitable books will be written about it, They should subtitle it Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, or Why Patience is Actually a Virtue.
I think if that was the one thing I wish I could go to Warner Brothers and say, please, do this instead of that. It's let's wait on the Justice League. You're jumping right into it, and you're building the unit. It's like you're starting with the Justice League and building out from that. It's like as if to say you don't have enough faith in your own comic book properties to say, we have to have a Justice League movie first, so that way people will be into it and then want to go see a Cyborg movie. I think Marvel already proved that people
Guardians of the Galaxy made how many $1 million?
A lot.
I mean, that is one of the most unknown properties in the world. And granted, Marvel as a movie production company has engendered much more goodwill than the good folks at Warner Brothers have by this point.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to seriously tell me with a straight face that, we don't want to put a whole lot of money into Cyborg. Well, okay, here's a thought. Just a random thought for all of you out there. Give the movie a smaller budget. Cyborg doesn't need a $100 million budget. If I had to bet, you could probably make a darn good Cyborg movie for $30 to $45 million. You have a relatively low risk, get the right people involved, and when you make a film of a high enough quality, people will come out to see it, especially when you can tie it in with something they have other positive associations with.
I don't know why they're not using the WB version of The Flash. I just saw that Barry Allen version on Supergirl, and he's very charismatic. People love the Flash television show, and then if you take that version of the Flash and build him up into his own movie, for like maybe $15-20 million, I think you'll have a hit on your hands. Why you wouldn't start that way and then go into the Justice League, I'll never know. But
look, you're right. People love the Flash on the CW network. I don't. I, for the life of me, can't get into it. But I long ago learned that, hey, Rob, you're a statistical outlier. You're not normal. Plenty of people love that version of the Flash. There's some goodwill there. It's got a big audience. Let's take some of the momentum that we have and build on it rather than necessarily starting from scratch.
And the same thing with Aquaman. Aquaman was a decent enough story and a well-put-together trailer, and I think you'll build some interest.
Can I also say, can we please stop trying to put Jason Momoa in that type of position, please? That poor guy. He's a competent actor. But the most recent Conan movie stars him as Conan and fails miserably.
But it has Bob Sapp in it.
Without a nose, I know. I don't care. Bob Sapp's terrible.
We have 20 minutes left. Let's get into some critic review here. Now, normally I just rate the rotten ones, but there are 202 rotten and 84 fresh. So I'm going to read a mix here. Some I like, and some have made me want to delete my Facebook page and not go on the internet anymore. That's where I'm at emotionally, people.
Mark, come on. If nothing else, I need you here to do these movie reviews with me.
I think this was like the first morning that I just left my phone on the charger, went out into the living room, I set my son up with breakfast, and proceeded to just get caught up on some TV that I haven't been able to watch because I've been working a lot, and just didn't even go on Facebook, didn't go on the internet. I literally tuned out for like the first 5-6 hours I was up today, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot for me. Who, when the first thing I do in the morning is sit down with my breakfast or my coffee and go on the internet. So yeah, that's where I am mentally right now. Honestly, WrestleMania can't come too soon at this point.
Come on, it's still a couple of months off.
WrestleMania?
Yeah.
WrestleMania is this weekend.
Huh? Really?
Did the Flash come visit you in a time tube, a boom tube?
No, just honestly, like, I mean, A, I don't watch a whole lot of wrestling at the moment, and B, even the people around me that do watch a lot of wrestling seem totally unenthused by this build, so I guess it just kind of slipped my mind.
Well, I'm not looking forward to a lot of the matches as such. I'm looking forward to a big giant distraction. So, all right. So this first one, this has probably been like one of my favorite reviews, and it's obviously, this is from Rotten Tomatoes, so these are all portions, but I believe this sums it up perfectly. Too competent to be universally panned, too disjointed to be universally praised, too anticipated to be a new revelation, too beloved and subject to be easily dismissed. The film will be one people either passionately love or passionately hate. And Rebecca Cusey of The Federalist, who wrote that review, pretty much hit the nail right on the head, I think.
Yeah, again, the people like me who are just kind of meh, we're few and far between on this one. I mean, again, there are things about it that I don't like, that I explained, I think, relatively well here. There's plenty of good things about this movie, too.
All right. Looking forward to it. I want to find some of the ones that were like that said they didn't understand what was going on in the movie. Let's see here. It's tedious, except when it's laughable. That's Trisha Olszewski of the Washington City paper.
I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. I mean, there are certainly tedious points and there are certainly laughable points. Like, real briefly, I didn't want to bring this up until you mentioned something laughable. The sequence wherein Batman rescues Martha Kent. There's a single element of that I looked at and just went, you are so wrong on so many conceivable levels, I'm not entirely sure where to start. And that would be dumbass with the scar and the throat tattoo deciding to use a flamethrower indoors. Like,
right,
I get you wanted Batman to shoot the tank so that you could blow something up. I'm okay with that as a concept. Like, okay, Batman's going to shoot this, flamethrower tank. Okay. No one utilizes a flamethrower in an enclosed environment.
Andrew L. Urban of Urban Cinephile. Full of loud misery and fiery battle, the film is a derivative of its genre and other filmic elements.
That strikes me as relatively unfair. Granted, I'm assuming that when you say it's derivative of its genre, your only other experience within the genre is what Marvel puts out.
Okay.
And
now,
which is that's unfair. There are plenty of other superhero movies.
Okay. This is actually a fresh review, but I don't understand how this person got to fresh from what they're saying, and it's something I alluded to earlier, where I think the critics expected a WWE style wrestling match and not a movie. So this is Gene Kaplan of Kaplan vs. Kaplan. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice takes an inordinate amount of time setting up the story and getting to the good part.
So you like Michael Bay's Transformers? That's what I'm getting out of your statement there. Man, you and I have belabored this point to death, but I guess there's a larger audience that still isn't necessarily either hearing this, understanding it, or caring. I actually think that in an action movie, almost more so than in a lot of other genres, if you are not given a reason to care about the characters, there is nothing to them. Now, this doesn't need an hour setup necessarily. But I mean, one of the best. We mentioned Commando when we reviewed London Has Fallen. You're given a very succinct reason right at the beginning of that movie to understand why Arnie goes on his rampage and to root for him to succeed. You need that in any film, basically, but specifically in an action film. If all they did was, you cue the John Williams and Superman walks down to the ring, and then, you cue Danny Elfman's theme or Hans Zimmer's from either The Dark Knight or, the first Batman that Tim Burton did. You ring the bell and they go at it. You don't care. There's nothing there. It's pure spectacle minus story, and at that point you might as well watch porn.
All right, I'm going to read you a couple in a row here. Let me actually do it, okay? Not like our list of 75 things.
Okay, you tell me when you're done and I can speak.
Thank you. Worst of all, there is not an ounce of fun to be found in this film's entire 2.5 hours. That's Steven Silver of Entertainment Tell. This is Peter T. Chataway of Pathos. Mostly, I just feel sad for Superman. Ed Whitfield of the Outre. If Christopher Reeve were alive, he'd be suing for character libel. Andy Leah.
Sorry, that's funny.
Andy Leah from Daily Star. Dour, disappointing, and shockingly incoherent. Andrea Chase from Killer Movie Reviews. Bloviated pretension. Okay, now you can respond.
All right. Let's start with the movie was no fun. Mark, do you enjoy social gatherings?
For the most part.
Would you say that you have fun getting together with 10 or 15 people and having drinks and socializing?
Sure.
I would rather slam my hand in a door. Now, which of those is fun?
For me, the social gathering.
Yes. Now, the fact that I find that to be a borderline physically painful experience, does that somehow alter any of the... Look, fun is subjective, people. There are 14 million idiots out there who watch Dancing with the Stars every week. And they have fun doing it. And I'm not here to badmouth them. Okay, I called them idiots, so my apologies there. There are 14 million people who will watch Dancing with the Stars on average every week. And you all presumably enjoy this experience. I'm glad you do. I'm glad you have something fun. I'm glad you come away from that having enjoyed yourselves. That does not make it fun. That means you enjoyed it. Saying that there's no fun in this movie is so fundamentally flawed as a notion. It's borderline narcissism.
Okay, I have to stop you.
I didn't have fun, so how could anyone else?
Stop. Halt. Stop. Cease. Desist. Leonard Maltin of Leonard Maltin's Picks disagrees with you. When was it decided superhero movies shouldn't be any fun? Please continue.
Yeah, first of all, not all of them are going to be fun in the same way necessarily, because they're all going to do things differently. B, fun is subjective. What you enjoy doing is not necessarily what I enjoy doing, which is not necessarily what anyone else enjoys doing. So the notion that there's not fun to be had, well, I'm sorry there wasn't somebody with their finger on the button of a laugh track for you. You're the same type of person who would watch Arrested Development and go, well, boy, this is a dour movie. It is a dour television series. Because you're not told when to laugh, so you feel awkward about it, and you think, therefore, there is no humor.
Okay, I have two more I got to read here, and then we just need to start working on getting out of this thing and do plugs and whatnot. This is Mike McGranagan from Aisle Seat. One of the worst superhero movies ever made. It is worse than Batman and Robin. It is worse than Catwoman. It is worse than last summer's Fantastic Four. A lugubrious experience that squanders every ounce of promise.
Okay, let's take this just one at a time here.
You seem breathless, sir.
You think this movie is worse than Batman and Robin? I cannot begin to express to you how faulty that assumption is. But hey, Joel Schumacher's was brightly colored and fun. So all of you people who were brainwashed by Adam West's Bram Kapow can be comfortable with it. I mean, granted, I'll give you that, this vision of the bat suit might be a little bit on the fat side. Still better than bat nipples. Or the incessant plugging of all the toys they sold to go along with Batman and Robin. That is, you are wrong on every conceivable level. This is worse than Catwoman. Did you actually see Catwoman, or are you operating off secondhand information? Because I, good sir, have suffered. And for you to make light of my suffering when it comes to Halle Berry mincing around borders on the offensive.
Out of a saucer. Drinking out of a saucer she was, my man.
And finally, Fantastic Four with, I almost said it and I can't say it, even though it's one of the... Mark, you remember what Jed said about that movie? And a particular casting choice they made?
I remember his objection to the casting choice, yes.
Yeah. Look, guys, I suffered through Fantastic Four as well. If you didn't hear Mark and I discuss that movie, which we did at length, I can sum it up for you real quickly, my position at least. I have never seen a movie that was so much nothing as Fantastic Four. Nothing. Absolutely and utterly nothing. There was
let me quickly
people were paid, images were projected onto a screen, 90 minutes of my life was taken, and I walked out of there
take it easy, Madeline Kahn. Okay, Batman v Superman has a muddled plot, a muddled, almost choked plot due to too many subplots. But for the most part, from A to Z, it's a coherent line with the, it's a straight line with the occasional bump in the road there that's questionable. Fantastic Four had a beginning and an end with a middle cutout. Okay,
had a very poor beginning and end.
It was like a first year film student put this thing together where you had a coherent beginning, no middle.
I mean, look, for everything that you said about the issues with the start of this movie, I feel similarly to the opening act of Fantastic Four. It takes them 60 minutes to accomplish nothing.
So you have this beginning that's one movie, no middle, and then an end piece that came from a different movie.
Yeah, it's...
Fantastic Four is a fucking mess.
Fantastic Four is nothing. I can't in good conscience recommend even watching Fantastic Four as some kind of exercise in what not to do with film. I can't do it. There's plenty of other examples that will actually give you material worth talking about. Fantastic Four is nothing.
All right, so Stephen Romay of The Australian gets it. He says, this is a high-quality superhero movie for adults, which is a pleasant, almost superhuman development. Problem is, not enough adults went to apparently work in the field of film criticism.
I do not think this is a high-quality film. This is a film that I mentioned before. I think there is some aspiration within this film that might potentially be admirable.
Okay, I have two more I got to read.
Okay.
I got two more I got to read here because they're both hilarious. They're both
I will
hysterical.
object to the characterization of this movie as high quality. So I think he's wrong on that respect. However, I will say this. For adults, pretty clearly, you got a 2.5-hour runtime. You're not appealing to the kiddie market here.
No. Rob Bow of Sci-Fi Movie Page. I found myself thinking horrid, unspeakable thoughts during the screening. Thoughts like, come back, Joel Schumacher, all is forgiven. And maybe David Hasselhoff's Nick Fury wasn't so bad. What kind of movie does that to a man? It's good to know that Rob Baugh took the time out of his criticism of Batman v Superman to work on his stand-up comedy routine.
Yeah. So many... I fundamentally object to the direction criticism has taken as a general rule to basically be, it's a vehicle to get myself over.
Okay. There's no joy here, says Jules Boyle of the Daily Record UK.
Well,
no
okay, but what do you find joy in? I mean...
Can I finish? There's no
Sorry.
joy here. No wonder or spectacle. Just a relentlessly grim and intense grind that can't stop reminding you how grim and intense it is.
You're going to seriously, you have the temerity to put your byline next to the words, there is no spectacle, in a movie built on spectacle? What is the freaking matter with you?
So I want to...
No, he only goes into space and gets nuked. There's no spectacle.
I want to see what the rotten reviews were for Schindler's List now.
Now, boy, that sure was a grim, dark reminder of a dark chapter in world history that we'd all just be better off sticking our heads in the sand about and pretending didn't happen.
Well, okay, there's only 3 of them. There's no trust here from the director that the audience might be able to fathom the horrors of the Holocaust if the lines between good and bad aren't distinctly drawn. Despite
It's almost like one of the most terrible events in human history has a distinct line between good and evil.
Despite admirable intentions and the undeniable splendor of his craft, ultimately what Spielberg has told us is a story of the list. He has not told us a story of Schindler. All right. And, folks, this is the last review I'm going to read for tonight, closing out this chapter of Batman v Superman here in the world on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. This is what Luke Y. Thompson of the New Times wrote about Schindler's List, a theme park ride masquerading as master's thesis.
What was his name again?
Luke Y. Thompson, who wrote that in 2003. So it's not a contemporary review.
Anyone within the sound of my voice who knows this person, I'll go into the future. 200 years from now. If you are listening to the sound of my voice and you know a descendant of this man, find them and strike them repeatedly with a fish. And if you know where he is now, please dissuade him from reproducing.
And I think that's a good place to end our review for the night. What do you say?
Yeah. The fact that we have adequately drawn a line from crappy criticism of a great movie in Schindler's List, you know, the idiots have just multiplied, and they've all gotten louder. That's all that's happened here.
So tomorrow, we close out all things DC here on the Radulich Broadcasting. This is 2 weeks of a lot of DC material, a lot of DC-oriented shows in celebration of this movie. It was a big deal, and I wanted to do a lot of content. Go back and listen to Jesse Starcher's Superman Earth 1 discussion he had with myself and Andrew Graham. Our review of Daredevil Season 2 is also up. Not a DC property, but still it's there. Go back and listen to our In Defense of Man of Steel. Someone wrote a comment on it before we had actually made the argument, which is a part of what's contributing to my increasing depression. Gavin has his case against Man of Steel, which was basically a long movie dissection. Of course, we have our review tonight. And tomorrow, Long Road to Ruin is back. Sean should be back, and we'll be looking at the animated Dark Knight Returns. And Sean will go into a long and in-depth explanation as to why Warner Brothers seemingly can get the DC cinematic animated universe right, but fumbles the ball at every turn when it comes to their live-action movies. Baby Metal comes out Friday. We will be reviewing it. There's no movie review next week. There's no Long Road to Ruin. There's only one show next week, and that's on Thursday, due to Robert Cooper's constantly fluid schedule. So we will be having our Metal Hammer of Doom, 9 o'clock, April 7th. We will be reviewing Baby Metal Resistance, and we should be having a number of people on that show. My wife might be appearing. I think Jason Teasley will be on. Starcher have promises to make an appearance, so check that out. Baby Metal, our first Baby Metal review was very popular. We're hoping people will tune in again for this one. I hope the album, which drops April 1st, is
not
is
an
as
April
good as the
Fool's
last
joke?
one. What?
Not an elaborate hoax by the band? We're
Oh, shut
dropping
up.
this new album. Haha, gotcha.
Baby Metal is amazing. On the 12th of April, we'll continue with our album reviews on the Metal Hammer of Doom. We'll be playing catch up as we review Killswitch Engage's Incarnate, which came out a few weeks ago. No other show that week, no movie reviews, no Long Road to Ruin, no nothing, just one show. And then Surgical Meth Machine, which is Al Jorgensen's side project, comes out on April 15th, as does The Jungle Book. So when we come back on April 19th, we'll be back to 3 shows again. Metal Hammer of Doom on Tuesday, Surgical Meth Machine. On the 20th, Robert and I will be reviewing The Jungle Book, which my daughter apparently now wants to go see, and my wife has thrown in the towel saying it's okay, but if she has nightmares, I have to get up and deal with it. That's the deal. So we'll talk about that on Wednesday.
I was looking forward to not seeing that movie.
April 20th. And then on the 21st, Long Road to Ruin, The Hunger Games Part 1. The following week, we'll be reviewing on Wednesday, the 27th of April, The Huntsman, Winter's War. And I'm sure Robert Winfree will slit his wrists. And then
I like Chris Hemsworth. I will not slit my... Look, if Snow White and the Huntsman didn't drive me to attempted suicide, this won't. Because you removed one of the big anchors around the story.
We might be joined that night by Pat Mullen, who is a huge fan of Chris Hemsworth. He has quite the man crush on him. So we'll see what happens there.
I'm a big fan of Hemsworth, too, so that's always fun.
And then on the 28th, we'll be concluding our look at the Hunger Games, Long Road to Ruin, back-to-back episodes, the 21st and the 28th, Hunger Games Part 2. And then on Friday, April 29th, Rob Zombie, the Electric Warlock Acid Witch Satanic Orgy Celebration Dispenser comes out. Say that 3 times fast. Rob Zombie, the Electric Warlock Acid Witch Satanic Orgy Celebration Dispenser. And we'll review that the week after. So that's enough there on plugs. Robert, they just announced the UFC 200 main event. It's going to be Conor McGregor, Diaz 2, and then Jose Aldo versus Frankie Edgar for the interim featherweight belt.
Yeah, I saw.
Some fun now, eh?
I didn't like their first fight in idea or in execution. I could not possibly care less.
Okay. Fair enough.
I don't even... that event has become just a celebration of excess.
Okay.
There's no point in McGregor-Diaz fighting again. McGregor should actually be defending the featherweight belt instead of having Edgar and Aldo fight over a fake one.
And there's no girls on this card so far.
Yeah. Probably not. Cain Velasquez is fighting Travis Brown.
Well, there we have a girl.
Yeah, that Travis Brown fellow.
No.
Mark, I understand that you don't like Cain Velasquez because he gets injured all the time. I refuse to sit here and listen to you support Travis freaking Brown over him at this point.
Whatevs. All right, go ahead and do your plug so we can get out of here.
This Sunday, the 411 Ground and Pound radio show is back. It's a usually weekly, look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. This week, we'll talk a little bit about UFC 200, talk about why MMA is still not legal in the state of New York, because at last I checked, the governor has not yet signed the bill into law, but it did finally pass the state assembly, so yay. And we'll be previewing UFC Fight Night 86, the card you put together.
Jared Roshan got cut, by the way.
Yeah, good. Jared Roshan sucks. The man has sucked hours out of my life in 15-minute his 15-minute fights drain me of enough energy to live for a good year.
Okay.
He is terrible. The main event of that card is Junior Dos Santos and Ben Rothwell. But the top 3 fights are all heavyweights. And I think the one below that is a light heavyweight fight. So I'll be banging my head into the wall.
And I'll be having a grand old time. That's actually the same.
You won't even be watching.
Yeah, I will. That's the same day as my son's birthday party. And because my wife twisted my arm, we're having his second birthday party at our house instead of, at Chuck E. Cheese or someplace where I wanted to do it. So I'm having people over to watch the fight.
You know you know how early that is in the morning?
No, it starts at like 2 o'clock.
No. They're doing that. That event starts. It's prime time in Croatia. It's actually like early morning here.
No.
I looked at
the main card starts at 2 o'clock.
First prelim starts at 8:30 my time, I want to say, which would be 6:30 Sunday morning your time.
Yeah, okay. The main card starts at 2 o'clock. The preliminary card starts at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, is what it says on.
10:30. Yeah, sorry, I did math going the wrong direction there.
So yeah, the prelims start at 10:30. Not likely going to be watching that.
8:30, and I will be.
The preliminary card's at noon. I may have it on during the party, but the party ends at 2 o'clock, and and that's all that really matters here.
Can I just say I hate you a little bit right now?
Why?
Because you get to skip the prelims.
Well, you know what? On the other hand, I have a 2-year-old's birthday party to throw in my own house.
You know what? If we could switch places for that one day, I might take you up on that offer. You come here, wake up at 8:30 to start covering, and I will wrangle 2-year-olds.
We're gonna have a bounce house and hot dogs and hamburgers.
I really don't care.
The bounce house tends to be very popular with both children and adults.
The over-under on jumping guillotine attempts for the prelims of that card is set at 6.
So we're at 8 minutes past the cutoff here.
All right.
We could
anyway.
Any moment.
Yeah, anyway, so again, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sunday evening, we will be previewing that event. The next Sunday, UFC Fight Night 86 starts early Sunday morning. I'll be covering that event in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. Then that evening, I will be hosting the show, reviewing that, and previewing the Fight Night after it, which comes along that Saturday, and I believe I think that's the Ferguson versus Nurmagomedov fight.
Yep, I'll be there live.
Fox. Yeah, I'm a tad envious.
Baby, I like it like that.
Yeah, I'm a tad envious. I'll say that because the UFC doesn't come to my state. All right, that's it. That's all we got. Mark and I will be back in a couple of weeks for the Jungle Book, which I was looking forward to not seeing, but all right. I will put myself through that CGI'd mess for you, the listeners, because you guys choose to listen to our reviews. You give of your time to Mark and I or whoever else is here. And time's our only truly finite resource. So thank you all for that. And you can hear me rip into the CGI from the Jungle Book, and I might have to explain for what seems like the umpteenth time why the Jungle Book is actually not a kid's story. All right. That's it for Mark and I. Please continue to be well, be safe, and behave. And as always, our brief insight into the minds of a studio executive to play us out.